A young person who loves books might just grow into an adult who writes books for young people. We went on the local scene with New England author Erin Petti. Take a look.
I did know at a young age that I wanted to be a writer. I think that I was in third grade and my third grade teacher, Mrs. Petty, took a story that I wrote in class and she loved it and gave it to the local newspaper, the Winthrop Transcript. And I kind of think that was a turning point moment for me because I realized that I love to do something that I might possibly be kind of good at. And kind of having a teacher invest in me, even just that little bit of time really early on made a big difference to me and kind of set my sights on writing, yeah. I went to Emerson College for my undergrad, and I majored in writing, literature, and publishing with a concentration in creative writing. Yeah, and it was an incredible place to meet other really wild, creative people, and I got to study creative writing, which was kind of amazing. My first published book is The Peculiar Haunting of Thelma B, and it is a middle grade, so when I say middle grade, that's kind of like a Harry Potter aged book, that kind of category. It's a middle grade paranormal adventure starring Thelma B, who is a scientist by nature and looks at the world kind of through scientific eyes, using the scientific method. And then one day, something very unscientific happens. There's a strange old woman who comes into her dad's antique shop, and she has an antique box. And inside the box is a spirit, and the spirit proceeds to wreak havoc on her life and kidnap her father, and Thelma has to figure out how to get her dad back, how to team up with her friends, how to believe in things that she may not have believed in before, and she goes on a wild adventure in order to get her family back together. And she discovers something really special about herself too in the first book. The second book is the sequel to The Peculiar Haunting of Thelma B. So it's Thelma B in Toil and Trouble. Thelma is living her life, you know, trying to finish up 6th grade, like a normal human being. Then all of a sudden, paranormal activity in her town starts stirring again, and really weird things start to happen. And it gets to a point where one of her classmates actually goes missing in the woods. At the same time, there's an a cappella group. So this is a comedy too. There's an a cappella group in the school that's exhibiting some unique behavior. And Thelma has to figure out, she has to team up with her ghost hunting crew and figure out who is creating all this chaos. How do they get their classmates safely back? And eventually how they can save their whole town from a kind of a dark magic that is taking over really under the surface. I think the inspiration usually starts with a location for me. So I have a number of other projects that I'm working on, but the Thelma B books were both inspired, and I'm working on the third one now, by a time when I lived in Maynard, Massachusetts, which is actually kind of out west, and it's a really awesome, quirky town with a lot of cool little small businesses, and it's got a river that runs through the middle of the town. And that, for me, I felt like there was an energy there that was really unique. And so when I created the Thelma B books, it was with this kind of idea that like, maybe there's a town like this, but where anything could happen. Those rocks that look like maybe they could be a monster sleeping in the river, maybe they're actually a monster sleeping in the river, you know? And I've got my own characters, and they grow and they develop their own ideas about the world, and they have their own adventures. But the inspiration comes from something about a place, something about the energy of a location and a place. And I know that's totally different for every single writer, but for me, that's where it comes from. There's something interesting about liminal spaces and in-between spaces. So I don't really write children's books, and I don't write teen books. I write middle grade. I think there's something amazing happening and terrifying and magical and unique that's happening between the ages of like 9 and 13 or 14 for kids. And it's this space where anything can happen because you have all the trappings of childhood and all the expectations of childhood. And whether you like it or not, and you might like it or you might hate it, elements of the real world and adulthood start coming in. and you as an individual are trying to weave together an existence that honors all of this childhood stuff, that's the only stuff you've ever known, and integrating in all of this adulthood stuff, which is much more silly and nonsensical for the most part. But it's an in-between space. So for me, that weaving leaves so many spaces in between the threads for magic to come in, and for unexpected things to come in, and for story to come in, and for growth to come in ways that just speak to me so much more directly than like writing for a really much younger audience or writing for an older audience. That's where the energy is for me, is right in that middle place. And I think a lot of middle grade horror, what if we give kids an insight into what it's like to look the hard thing in the face and beat the monster instead of being so scared that you pretend like it's not there, which is really, you know, in a ghost story, we give the monster an actual monster, you know what I mean? But what an amazing thing to instill in kids so that they can learn it, or start to learn it at 10 and 11 instead of for the first time when they're 35 and 36, you know? So I think I love middle grade horror, I love spooky middle grade, and I love what it allows, the way that it allows kids to think about their own emotions, and the way that they can take control and take power in scary situations. So for me, writing is a part of kind of like my metabolism emotionally, in a way. I think that, you know, even when it was like really, like I really wasn't sure that I was gonna put out a second book or I was gonna do anything, I still wrote thousands and thousands and thousands of words, you know? And whether those words ever see anything or anything, you know, that's kind of like not my business in some ways. My business is making sure that I'm taking care of myself, and a part of taking care of myself is creating stories and writing and using my imagination. So this is number 2 in the Thelma B series. I think that it's going to be a trilogy. I'm working on the 3rd Thelma B book right now. I'm really happy with the energy that we've got inside of it and where it's going. If I finish the whole thing and it's not done, then there might be a 4th book, but my goal is to have it be a trilogy. So that's kind of like the next big thing. I am kind of playing around with taking some stories and creating more like dramatic scripts and spec scripts, so that might be kind of an interesting direction to think about for the future. But yeah, I'm excited to just keep writing stories, because I don't know what the next one's gonna be yet, you know, because I'm kind of in one. So I guess I just hope I get to keep writing books and people keep reading the books, and I keep getting to help, because the thing that I didn't necessarily expect but has turned out to be an incredible experience is when I'm teaching these writing workshops and I'm getting, you know, that like direct experience with these kids that have their own stories. That's been fulfilling in a way that I had no idea that it would be that cool, because it's so direct. I'm talking about like, you know, impacting the life of kids through books, but it's like, then, you know, this is what teachers must feel like this every day. But like, you know, impacting the life of kids, because like I can see in front of me in these programs, these kids are like developing their own imaginations and feeling proud of themselves and like writing stories. So I want to keep doing that too. I guess like I just hope I get to keep doing what I'm doing now.
To keep updated on Thelma B and more, visit erinpettibooks.com.
Hi friends, if you like this video by The Local Scene, share the love and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe.